Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? It is Elder Mike, and I'm excited to be with you once again. I am so grateful to be able to be before you tonight on Unveiled. It is my privilege and my honor to be filling in for our pastors, Pastor Damon Boots and co-pastor Tanisha Boots on tonight for our married ministry. I see y'all are already lighting up the chat. Y'all know what to do. Show some love. Say hello to everybody. Who we got in the building? Let's see. We got Elder Hunter. Good evening. How are you? How was your day? Melanie, what's going on? What's going on? Jaleesa, how are you? How was your day? How's your week going? My beautiful good things today. Hello, my love. What's going on? Kopi, how you doing? Oh, Melanie is excited. She got her fist pumping and everything. She's ready for tonight. Oh, Melanie's going to sing too? Oh, I didn't even know that. How the host didn't know that we got a special guest singer. Melanie, you go ahead and dial in so we'll know whenever you're ready. Yes, babe, that commercial was so smooth. It goes hard. Got that West Coast feel to it. Yeah. Let's see who else we got in the building. Elder Hunter, my day has been amazing. Amen. Well, y'all know me. I like to know why your day was amazing. We want to know. Give us some details. For those of you who are our first time visitors, could you please go to StreamYard.com and allow StreamYard to access your Facebook so we can see your names in the comments? Hello, Sister Joanne. How are you? Good to see you. This is our Unveiled Married Ministry. And if you don't know, now you know. We have something for everybody in the family. We have Pillow Talk for women. We have Man Cave for men. We have The Village for youth. And tonight we have Unveiled. And we have a special guest that we have coming on. Last time we had Unveiled, Kopi and Sister Lornell Williams. They did their thing talking about 5 things that no one told them about being a wife. 5 things about being a wife that nobody told them, and they rocked the house. Hey, Sister Shy, how you doing? Good to see you. Chan, the very single Chan is here as well. And it's okay. You in the right place too, to help you get ready and prepared for when the Lord calls your man into your life. You'll have some good wisdom on what to look out for, and also the things that you can work on in your season of preparation. So I'm not going to prolong the time. Our special guest is ready to jump on. But before I do, I got to drop it one more time so y'all can check us out. The new Family of Faith Hotness. Yes, family, as I said tonight, we have a special guest. And when I think about the topic, it's actually in response to last time we came together. The topic for tonight is 5 things about being a husband that nobody told me. Yes, 5 things about being a husband that no one told me, y'all. And when I was thinking about somebody to come on with me, I wanted somebody who was going to drop some knowledge. I wanted somebody who was going to keep it raw, real, and uncut, and somebody who I know intimately. And when I began to think about it, I began to think about my friend, my brother, somebody who over the last year, we've been able to walk out life together, not just as friends or counterparts, but we've actually been journeying in ministry together. This brother I'm about to bring on, he has ministry experience for over half of his life. He's been an associate pastor. He's been a youth pastor. He's currently a lead missionary with Young Life. I am bringing on to you guys my brother, Hector Garcia.
What's up, man? What a privilege and pleasure it is to be here with Faith, Faith of the Faith, man. I'm excited. I hear great things about y'all from Mike.
Yes, Hector, thank you for being here so much with the family. As I said, we've gotten a chance for the last year to be able to walk in ministry together. But if you could take a couple minutes, and tell us about yourself, tell us about your journey in ministry. What
Yeah,
qualifies you to be a part of a marriage conversation?
I don't know. I think my wife would disagree with me being on here. No, I'm joking. I've been married to a beautiful Dominican from New Jersey. Her name is Stephanie Garcia. She's awesome. She's amazing. I tell people all the time, she will love you uh, to death, but that also means she will hurt you if you hurt anybody she loves. She's definitely. My wife is somebody who would go from 0 to 100 real quick, so don't mess with her. But I've had the privilege of being her husband, and most importantly of having such an amazing wife. And so it's been 11 years since we've been married. We've got 3 kids. We've got Alyssa, who's actually 13 years old, just turned 13 actually, and then we've got my twins, Amber and Ariana, who are 4 years old. And so I've been married for a minute, and she's been with me through ministry, and she's not only supported me and cheered me on, but she's been hands on for a while, especially before the twins.
Yes, awesome. Awesome. So we got double digits in marriage. We got kids. So we got some good experience right here on the line. And I'm gonna jump right in. That's the kind of guy I am. You know me. We're gonna jump right in. When I asked Hector about 5 things that nobody told him about being a husband, he came with some good stuff. And we're gonna jump into the first thing. Now, this first one, when you gave it to me, I looked at it. I'm like, man, this is real cliche. You got to come with some juice behind this one because we've heard this before. We've heard this
Yeah.
before. But your first tip was communication is key. Tell us about that. Why is communication key in being a husband?
Man, there's a couple things or a few things that I think about when I think communication is key, right? I think first of all, I think of our Lord, right? God being a God of communication, right? And here's what I mean by that. He spoke everything into existence. The Father spoke to Jesus when Jesus was on earth, right? And the Bible talks about how even Proverbs it talks about how God speaks to us through nature, and then most importantly, He speaks to us through His Word, right? And so communication is very important, not just in marriage, but just in general, right? And so in marriage specifically, I think of all of the things that my wife were able to get through because we talked about it, right? A lot of times we're taught that if something bothers you, whether in whatever place of your life that is, if something bothers you, we're taught to keep that inside and not talk about it because you don't want to hurt the person, or we're taught to not say it just because you don't want to be disrespectful, or sometimes we're taught, man, don't even say anything because nothing's going to change, right? And I'll tell you what, that's the opposite of what can happen if you have healthy communication, right? And so
Hold
early
on,
on in my
hold on.
marriage,
I don't want to bring you. You already dropped about 2 or 3 things, and I don't want to run past. The first thing you said was we got to talk about everything. Talking
yeah,
about everything. Let's lean into that piece a little bit more about talking about everything.
yeah, here's there's things in marriage. You got to understand, right? You got people with two different different beliefs, maybe even two different characters. Like my wife and I, for example, I'm from Guatemala. We're chill. We're cool. We're the type that if you get to a certain point, you're gonna see the real me. But my wife is different, right? She's like, man, you're gonna see the real me real quick, right? And so in our marriage, that was one of the things where I was like, man, I'm not gonna say anything because it's gonna lead to something else. And I learned really quick, man, that's not the way to do it. Right? So there's certain things about me that my wife didn't like. That if we didn't make communication an important thing, you know what? It could have ruined our marriage. There's certain things that my wife had to call me out on. There's certain things that I told my wife about that I wasn't necessarily thrilled about, and we had to work those things out. But if we don't talk about them, guess what, man? At some point, it's gonna come out in the wrong time, right? If we're in the middle of something and I say, man, you stay doing that. That's why I hate you. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? You never told me, right? And so I think for us in our marriage, man, it was like, man, I remember the day. I remember the day, but I remember that conversation that we had, and maybe it wasn't until like third year of our marriage that we really said, man, we got to tell each other everything because this is hurting our marriage if we're not talking about it. And so when I mean everything, I mean, man, what are the things that I'm doing that hurt you? What are the things that I'm doing that you don't like? Even what are the things that I'm doing that I'm annoying you with, And then even in intimacy, right? What are the things that I'm doing in intimacy that you're seeing in me that are wrong? And so we've had very, very real conversations in our marriage. And I really think that's part of the reason why we're able, obviously there's greater reasons that, but I think that's one of the tools that the Lord used to help us get through our marriage and stick with it.
There's a couple things that you and I have had personal conversations with as brothers of both being married. Two things that I'd like if you could kind of step into. When I think about communication and the times when I haven't communicated, these two things always come up: pride and fear. Yeah. Just being a man, and then the man on how I've been brought up and some things that I've been exposed to, there's a pride that exists that sometimes, if I'm honest, I feel like, man, I ain't got to talk about that. We shouldn't have to talk about it. It should just be what it is. And then there's also the fear factor, the factor of if I bring this up, what will this lead to? Like, if I bring this up, is this going to start a further disagreement, argument? Is this going to make things worse? And so really sometimes there's an internal battle of, man, I'd rather keep this to myself. So there's those two things that I battle with is, one, we shouldn't have to talk about this. And two, I really don't want to tiptoe over there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think for me in our marriage, a lot of times it was pride. For me, more pride than fear. I think I was always like, man, she can't know this about me, like, or even other people, right? When we talk about communication is key, I'm specifically talking about between my wife and I, but also when speaking to somebody outside, seeking counsel outside, there's certain things where pride would definitely come in, where I'm like, man, I don't want to talk to anybody about how I do or what I do, right? And so I think even in that sense, communication is super important. But pride definitely gets in the way of that because you don't want to seem, especially as a man, right? A lot of times you have this thing of like, man, I don't want to seem weak. I don't want to seem like I got it all together. And those are the things that we've got to come to an understanding of, man, guess what? You don't have it all together. And that's the reason why communication is important, because you can't this is not one of those things where you can fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
And so many things in our lives, we can fake it till we make it, but we can't do that in marriage. And so we've got to get to a point where we're men enough to be able to be like, yo, I can't, man. I gotta let you know this, or I gotta let somebody know this.
Yeah, I think that's huge right there. And for all the men out there, you're not less of a man by saying I need help or I ain't got it, or we need to readdress this. The way we were doing it isn't working. We need to reassess and regroup and then come back to it. I think that's so key.
And you know what, Mike? Man,
Yeah.
you talk. I mentioned how for me it was pride and not fear, but as I think about it, I think fear was one of those things too, because part of the communication it's a two-way street, right? And so when my wife and I communicated, it wasn't just, hey, these are the things I don't like about you, Stephanie, right? No, it was, hey, what are the things that I'm doing wrong? What are the things that I'm doing that are affecting you, right? And so I think that for me, the fear did come in that part. Like, I don't know if I want to hear what you got to say, right? But it's important for us to know.
Yeah, you just said a mouthful right there. Man, sometimes as a man, we are afraid to hear our flaws. we're afraid to hear where we have been slipping or falling, and that's a part of communication too. Is having a safe space. Is having a safe space where we can be unoffended and share our feelings and ask from our spouse, hey, what are some things you're noticing about me? What are some things you're noticing about our marriage? And that is scary. That is really scary. You mentioned that in around year three is when you guys realized that you had to talk about everything. Are there any principles or tips or things that y'all did to kind of ease into that? Because that's not an easy, if we're honest, that's not an easy transition to say, hey, we're going to talk about everything. What are
Yeah.
some things that you guys put in place to get comfortable going there to talk about everything?
Man, honestly, we were tired. We were tired of fighting. I think one of the things that the Lord really used to help us to get to that point was the fact that every time we would argue, every time we would fight, the first thing I would think about was my daughter Alyssa, who was already born. And we would slam doors, yell at each other. It was bad. It was really bad. And that started happening around year two. And I think what helped us get to that place of, hey, we've got to talk about this is we looked at our family as a unit and said, man, this is not healthy for her, for Alyssa, right? And so I think even as I'm saying this, and somebody might be on here and be like, man, I don't have kids, but I'm still struggling. Like, man, still the family, the environment that you're creating for your home is not a good one, right? And so for us, that's what really brought us to that, to where we were like, yo, this is not healthy for her, for us. And really, there was a moment, and I think I've got my wife's permission to share this, but there was a moment that really kind of did that turn for us. We were, I remember at one point my wife started saying some things to me, and I was yelling back, and we were offending each other, right? Because that's what we thought it was. We had to see who won, right? We had to see who wins in this match, and so we were going at it back and forth. And then she said something to me where she said, it was something to the effect of, "Hey, if I get really mad, I could beat you up, right?" And I'm telling you, my wife's gangster, right? And I said, "Hold up." I said, "No, not you going too far, right?" And I remember leaving the house, and I said, "You know what? I'll be right back." And I left the house. We used to live right down up the street from a Walmart, and I went down the street to Walmart. I bought two pair of boxing gloves, right? I bought a pink one and a red one. I brought it back, threw them at my wife, and I remember I said, "Here, come on, put them on. We gonna see who's real now, right?" And I know as I'm sharing this, I know people are like, "Whoa, chill out, heck." But I put them on, right, and we started to kind of box, and it turned into something funny, right? It was that moment where we were like, "Yo, we wilding out. We gotta chill," right? And so during that time, that's when we hit it. We sit down and we were like, "Man, you know what? We can't do this. This could be really dangerous." And I thank God that he turned it into something that we could laugh about, because that could have really been dangerous, right?
Yeah.
You don't ever want to get to that place with your wife, and I think the Lord gave me the idea at that moment to do that, to be honest with you. But it was that point where we were like, man, we've got to seek help. We got to do something. And then that's kind of what really led to us saying, led to what that first conversation of, man, is that you, and these were the terms that you would hear that they always tell you not to say, right? But my wife would say, like, you always do this. And I'll say, man, you never do this, right? And, you never want to use always and nevers, right? But we were throwing that at each other, and it got to a place where we're like, you know what? I don't feel like I always do that. And here's why. And we started having this dialogue, man. And that really led to us like, man, this is good for us. We need to continue doing this. And I think that's really what did it for us. And then after that is when we started, and to be honest with you, it kind of did things backwards. But it was after that where we're like, man, the only way that we can continue to have healthy communication is if we see each other through the lens of what the scripture says we should see each other as, right? And so we started to seek the Lord for advice. Really, prayer was strong, became a big thing for us. We started to talk to other married couples. Going back to the communication piece, right? We started to talk to other people to see, hey, what's your marriage like? Hey, are you guys boxing? Is this normal? And so we just started having different conversations with people.
Yeah. Thank you. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move us on. But to sum up, communication is key. I think the real meat behind that is we got to talk about everything. And a part of talking about everything is fighting fair. There's certain things that we're not going to say. There's certain things that we're not going to do. And then there also has to be a safe space for us to do it in as well, so that we can eliminate fear and we can eliminate pride. I love it. I love it. Let's jump into this second point. And this one, I'm gonna really be quiet because I want to really hear your heart behind this second point, because I think a lot of times early in marriage, I know this was kind of our testimony, is there was a lot of that criticism of each other, of really what you aren't doing, rather than what can we do together. So talk about that.
Yeah, I grew up in church, right? Latino Hispanic church to be exact, right? And in the Hispanic community, and then obviously I don't speak for all Latinos when I say this, right? But in many Hispanic communities, this idea of the man being just over and dominant over the woman is very strong, right? And sometimes, or not sometimes, but a lot of times in the churches, it's uh, certain scriptures taken out of context, right? And so I was taught that, I was the one who was going to rule over my wife. I knew more than her. I was better than her. She was made out of my body, right? Like, she was only here because it was because the Lord used me, right? So, that's what I was taught, man. And when I came to, even when we were having those conversations in the beginning, it was more of me saying, man, you're just not like this. You're not like that. You don't do what I was told you were gonna do. You don't serve me the way you're supposed to be serving me, right? And so that instead of fixing our marriage, that could be very dangerous, right? Especially if and that's why I kept saying earlier in the first point, I kept saying healthy communication, right? Because what it became was a thing where I was just attacking my wife because I was taught. So I would even use scripture and tell her like, "No, man, you're supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to be quiet and listen to me." And that's not what the Lord has set up for our marriage, right? And so I wasn't seeing my wife in the lens that God wants me to see my wife in, right? And so I think that can be very dangerous, man, because sometimes, and I put the word criticism in there, and I love, not everybody knows this, but when I threw it out to you, Mike, I said judgment and criticism, and you said, man, unjust criticism, right? Because it's true, right? I think criticism can be great in our marriage if we're looking at it in a sense of, man, like you said, what are the things that we can do here to make this thing better? But the way that I was coming at my wife was, yo, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do to fall in line with what I've been taught a wife needs to be, instead of us journeying in this together to find out what both wife and husband need to look like, right? In the lens of God.
Yeah.
And
So
so, yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Just to bring it in. So there is a space in marriage where we can share with each other the things that we notice. And
Yeah.
what are some markers that we can look out for so that sharing for us to grow, that sharing for us to chase after purpose together, chase after this thing that God called us together for, that doesn't turn into me judging you and criticizing you unjustly based off of what I expect and what I want, but being able to let me discern the things that we can do to grow and get better. What are some markers that we can be mindful of as husbands?
Yeah, I think listening to your language, right? Because a lot of times when I was speaking, it was all, you're not doing this, and I need you to do this for me, right? And so a lot of the time, the reason why I say this, it destroys trust, is because if it's coming from a place of selfishness, it's going to get to a point where it got to a point in our marriage. It got to a point where, see, man, I see where this is coming from. It's selfishness. A lot of times as parents, I know we're not talking about parenting, but just an example, a lot of times as parents, we want kids to stop crying, to stop bothering us because it bothers us, right? It's not for no other reason but because it bothers us. And so I think the language or the things to look out for is, am I doing this because of how it feels for me? Or am I doing this because of what it can do for our marriage? And so I think that as we're having these conversations, if you keep hearing you, and then a negative comment, and then back to me, then that's sharing you like, man, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're not looking out for your marriage. You're looking out for you, right? And that's
You,
dangerous, because especially with a husband and wife, what it does when all I'm doing is coming at you, just judging every single thing that you do and criticizing everything that you do, it makes you seem less than me, and you're not less than me, right? At least I know my wife's not less than me, right? But the way I talked to her, the way I judged her, the way I criticized her in the past was making her feel again like, oh, here I am trying to mold you and fix you to who you have to be my perfect wife. And it's, no, man, God created her the way that He created her, and she's a blessing to me, right? And so anyway, I think those are the kind of things you got to look for. Like, when you start thinking, when you start looking at the stuff you're saying, is it really because you only really caring about you? Is it pride? Is it selfishness?
yeah. So I want to get back to this destroyed trust part, because I think you must have a testimony or a story about that to make you think about how judgment and unjust criticism will destroy trust. But I want to come back to that because you just opened something up that we called the bonus. And I want to insert this in right here parenthetically in the middle of this point about my wife is my partner, not my child or project. And the reason why I'm inserting it in here is how we're talking about judgment and criticism and this whole idea of being ahead and being humble in our position. Let's talk about this thought that you threw out, and this was kind of a curveball after you sent your points. You sent your points in.
Yeah, I think that's one of the. I kind of mentioned it early on, but I think that's one of the things that I had to learn in marriage, and was real quick. I had to learn this. I saw my wife not as a child. Sounds weird, right? But I did see her as a project, right? This is who God has given me to mold her into who she needs to be. Again, for me, right? Very selfish, and so I've had to learn, like, man, my wife has gifts that I'll probably never have, gifts that I didn't even know I would need. And so I learned really quick, man, the way that she challenges me, the way that she pushes me, the way that she pushes me to be out of my comfort zone. I learned real quick how, man, if anything, it almost seems like I'm the project, like she's done some things for me where I've learned to grow, man. And so, again, because of the environment that I grew up in, I was taught that I was gonna come in and mold my wife into being this perfect wife for Hector, when in reality is, man, God saved me by bringing my wife in to do this along with me. And so, when I say this, by this I mean to raise my family, together, to keep the household, to teach our children, to grow each other, and to do even in ministry, like, we're in this together, man. And she's got gifts again that I don't have. I have gifts that she doesn't have, and we've learned how to combine those together to do things. And so she's not. I had to learn that real quick. She's not my project. She's my partner.
Yeah, and I love what you said, that you guys complement each other. You guys complement each other, and I think that shows the intentionality of God bringing two people together, is that where you're deficient, she's proficient, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And that's how a good partnership works, is that I don't try to stand in your shoes and you don't try to stand in my shoes, but we stand in our own shoes and we make each other better. We make this marriage better. We make this family together, and we work hand in hand. And that posture is important, to know that this is your partner. Just because the word articulates it as, being the head of the household, that doesn't mean you use that to dominate your family and your wife into submission. That actually just puts you in order of how the family is made up of responsibility, not necessarily on how you yield the position. So I like how you said that, how you work together and you fit each other. And the posture of seeing your spouse as your partner, partner.
And even in ministry, Mike, I think one of the things that I did for years, even in our marriages, I've been called, by God. You haven't, so you gotta just cheer me on while I do this, right? And that's not good. First of all, not just for her, but it wasn't good for me either. All right, like, again, there's things that my wife brings that I could never have, man. And I learned, the Lord really allowed me to see how important my wife was, even from my ministry that supposedly I was called to, not understanding that we were called to that, right? And so,
Yeah.
We talk about the burden that the Lord carries, right? A lot of times I try to carry that just on my own, even without my wife, and it's different, man, when we can carry that burden together and together bring it to the Lord and let Him carry it, right?
Yeah. And that's something that I'm learning, is that there's no way I can do what I'm discerning. It's not even the full picture, but it's no way I can do what I'm discerning my call is to be without my wife. There's no way, with the way that she compliments me, with the things that she picks up and sees that I don't see, with her interceding and praying for me. There's many nights I wake up and she's praying for me. Couple nights she scared me. She scared me, but just knowing that there's no way I can do this thing called life without this compliment that the Lord graced me with called my wife, not something that I'm supposed to dominate or domineer, but allow her to be able to flow in what she's been called to be.
For
Um,
sure.
so let's bring it back in. This judgment, unjust criticism will destroy trust. How does judgment and criticism destroy trust?
Yeah. Think about this, man. You may have maybe people on here have had this at work. You know, there's this thing where you're working real hard at your job, right? But no matter what you do, you keep coming back. And your boss keep coming back to you, just saying, "Man, you're just not doing enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're not doing this the way that I do this. You're not doing that the way that I do that." At some point, man, you start noticing some things where you're like, "Man, you're not about me." You don't care. You just want to make sure you do your thing, get your credit, get your shine, and you don't really care about me. You're just using me, right? And so I think the same thing happens in marriage, man, and it destroys it because after a while, if all I do is come to my wife and just pick on her about everything that she does, I think at some point, how could she trust somebody who she realizes is not even for them? Like how could she continue to trust somebody who's just selfish all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's real good. You got to build up. You got to build up your spouse. We have to build up our spouses. We have to communicate. We have to communicate to them how much we love them and care for them. And then it goes back to creating that space. There should be a space created where we could share the things that we're learning and we're seeing about each other and not use it as ammo and not use it and not use it outside of appropriate times, because I think a lot of that's where it comes up. Some of these judgments and criticism may even be valid, but we bring it up in battles to defend ourselves, almost as a defense mechanism. And I believe
Exactly.
that breaks down trust as well. If you're not even telling this to me for me to get better, you're telling me this so that you can feel better about whatever we're discussing. You're using it as a weapon against me so that you won't be wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. Good stuff, bro. Good stuff. I told y'all, raw, real, and uncut. We being vulnerable out here. We telling the truth and shaming the devil. Let's get into this next point. You will be apologizing and forgiving all the time. Whoa. Tell us about that, man, because that's real.
Yeah. I just had a conversation with my wife today. I had to apologize for it. I wish somebody would have taught me that early on, because going back to pride and selfishness, I had never been taught to go back and apologize for my wrongs. And in marriage, if you don't do that, you're not gonna make it. Like you've got to be able to. And again, this all goes back to being prideful, right? Like you've got to be able to drop your pride to be able to come back to your wife or your husband, right? Your spouse, come back and be like, man, I messed up. I'm sorry. And you gotta be able to do that enough and not get tired of that, because it's gonna continue to happen, right? A lot of times you're taught, man, how many times your husband gonna keep doing that? Like something as simple. I'll use a simple illustration, like something as simple as leaving the toilet seat up. And I do that quite often, right? And my wife gets so mad, right? And it's always like my response used to always be like, man, yo, just put it down. Like you don't have to come yell at me, just put it down yourself, right? But I've learned, man, that I've had to come and apologize even for that kind of stuff, right? And what the point I was getting to was I've had to do that over and over and over, and my wife's been super patient with me, right? And forgiving me for the things that I do and not getting tired of it. And that's the thing, man. In life, we're taught, man, you get 3 strikes and you're out, right? Guess what? That's not a biblical principle, right? Like there's things we gotta get used to, man. We're human, we're sinners, and we're gonna fail. There's things that we're gonna continue to do that are gonna hurt one another, right? We're gonna hurt each other, and it's just a reality. The point is that we want to continue to get better and do less and less of that, right? But as we're trying to journey through this and as we're trying to learn, you're gonna fail, right? And so it's important for us to remember, man, you just get used to it. Get used to going and apologizing, but also get used to forgiving. It's not one way, and be fair with that. Sometimes the guys, I know a lot of men where we're just like, for women they'll be like, hey, 3, 4, 5 strikes, you're out. For us, it's like, hey, 1 strike and you're out, right?
Yeah.
And that's not fair, right? So we got to learn to be fair in that as well. to where we've got to learn that we're going to be also forgiving, and we can't get tired of that.
So do we lose anything? I think sometimes as a man, you feel like you lose something and apologize. Do we lose when we apologize?
I don't know, not me, man. Every time I apologize, I win. I think my
get a bigger bill, right?
I think for me, man, it's and here's what I say where I think I win. Also, I know I was joking with that, but for real, I do think I win because it allows my wife to see a real me, right? It allows my wife to respect me. We just said how judgment and all stuff can destroy trust. I think apologizing could help to gain trust, right? Just being real about man, I messed up. But then of course that needs to be coupled with action, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I was joking about the toilet seat, but going back to that, like I think that's one of the things where I often fail. It's like, man, I'm sorry I did that and that bothers you so much, but then I keep doing it, right? I think it's got to be coupled in order to gain trust. It's got to be coupled with action as well. So on both sides, not just the husband.
Yeah, one thing that Sade has taught me is that a lot of times it's not about being right or wrong. It's about how you said it. So that's been my journey in apologizing. And I thank her for it because apologizing early on was hard. Because I felt like what I was saying was right, was right. And the more we are able to build our trust with each other and me being able to trust her, she's helped me to see when I'm wrong and how I say things, how my delivery may have been off, how my tone may have been off. And so apologizing, even when I thought I might have been right, opened me up to be able to see more of the picture of whatever we're talking about. And when we think about forgiveness, and you mentioned how the Lord forgives us, I think leaning into the fact of how much we appreciate being forgiven gives us fuel to forgive our spouse as well. If you've ever done anything and you've needed forgiveness, that's a fuel to know that, hey, forgiveness is a grace that everybody should be afforded and should be able to get, especially in marriage.
Yeah.
And so real quick, because we're coming up on time, and I want to leave some space for Q&A. One tip real quick on how to get good at forgiving and apologizing. So they said the baby just kicked when I said that. One quick tip about apologies and forgiveness.
Yeah, I think you just shared one of the most important ones when coming to forgiveness. I think is remembering how much you needed forgiveness, right? And then also with apologizing, and I keep coming back to this because I think this is the root of a lot of the issues in marriage, especially on the men's side, is listen to the things that you're saying when you speak to your wife. Listen to the things that you're saying when you think about the things that your wife does or did, because a lot of it is rooted in pride, and so I think another tip is, man, start working on getting rid of pride, because that will kill your marriage, right? And so when it comes to apologizing and forgiving, I think that's got to be key. You got to keep analyzing. You got to keep looking at yourself and what the Lord has done for you, to be able to not only ask for not only apologize but also to forgive.
Good stuff. And this was a good one, man. We got a lot of comments out there. It doesn't weaken a man to apologize. We need to normalize apologizing. Forgiving helps couples bounce back. Not to bounce back. When you're able to forgive somebody else, you don't have to bounce back. Give something to outdo somebody else, and kill pride so it doesn't try to kill your marriage. We're going to take a quick commercial breaks. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Look, I said commercial break, and he jumped. But we're going right into point number 4. Year 1 and maybe year 2 and 3 are going to be mad difficult. I'm going to jump out the way, and I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, man. you know, I mentioned what happened to us around year 2 or year 3, but I wish somebody would have told me that so that I could have prepared for that better. Um, I always thought, man, which is crazy why I was taught this, but I was taught that the first, they'll say, man, the first year, 2 years are the honeymoon stage, right? And so, what was tough for me was to realize, man, it's not as beautiful as everybody made it seem. And I think the reason for it for us was because we started to learn so many things about each other that we had no idea was going on inside. And so for us, the mainly the second year was real hard for us. It got really hard because
Hector, hold up. You said this learning. You started learning more about each other. Let's talk about that, about
yeah,
the learning, about what happens in that moment when you get real close. Like I'm talking, you're living together.
yeah.
Now you're sharing a bathroom. Now you're sharing a closet. You're sharing a kitchen. You're sharing. Let's talk about the learning of
Yeah, yeah, man. And in the beginning of marriage, that's what a lot of that is, right? You're starting to see how, like even with the toothpaste, like for me, I do the toothpaste from the middle, and just go up. My wife's like, I'll do it from the bottom. Even those things were things were like, yo, you're weird, man. That's not how I do it. Why you put the toilet paper like that? I do it this way. Like small things, and then it became even bigger things of like, yo, why do you speak that way, or why do you do that? Like with us, I mentioned I'm Guatemalan, she's Dominican. For Guatemalans, we're pretty quiet and chill and calm. Dominicans are not, right? They love to party. They're loud, and so a lot of times, even in that, man, we would be talking. You know how when you go to a restaurant, and sometimes the people in the back they're speaking a certain way to each other, and you're like, yo, why are they yelling at each other like that? And when you come to find out, like they're just talking normal. Well, that's kind of how it was with us, right? I would say things, and my wife would get loud, and I'd be like, yo, why are you screaming? And she'd be like, I'm not screaming. And so like those were some of those things that we had to learn. Like we didn't just have to learn the things that we did, but we had to learn culture. Like, yeah, we're both Latinos, but we're from two different countries and we do things differently. I use this example all the time. In Spanish, when you say galleta, for me that means a cookie, right? For my wife, that means a slap in the face, right? And so like we had to learn. I had to learn her culture. That she had to learn my culture. Had to learn her family. She had to learn my family. And so there was a lot of stuff that we didn't think about. And so like when I speak to younger people that are looking to get married, man, I always tell them, man, learn those things before you get into marriage. And I wish I would have known that because it would have helped me to understand my wife earlier on rather than to have to go through all these difficult things and understand her later, and vice versa. Her as well with me.
That's really good because we got some single people here that's watching as well, and I'm one of the proponents now that I've gone through some years of being married. I'm one of the proponents on taking your time before you get married to learn each other. Now there's a whole bunch of factors that tells us that we need to speed up. We need to hurry up. We need to run. We need to run into marriage. We got cultural things. We got our flesh telling us something like we want to be married. But the season of learning each other is really important because I believe there's a grace on it on the single side to learn that on once you get married and it gets real and these bills start coming in and and now my preferences are being infringed upon. Well, I like the AC down in the 60s and she might want the AC at 75. It becomes real on the other side of marriage. And then also at the same time, those first few years, we have to really be postured to have grace for one another. And so for anybody who's single, take your time, learn, and learn again. For newly married, have grace for each other because you got two people coming from two different households, two different cultures, two different backgrounds, raised differently, coming into one space, learning how to become one. So it takes patience, it takes grace, and it goes back to our other points about communication. But you're absolutely right. Nobody said. They talked about the honeymoon stage. But they didn't say that the first few years was going to be this challenging, but we in the right place. This is unveiled. We going behind the veil to talk about the real deal, the real deal.
Yeah.
So anything else you got on this point, man, about it's going to be mad difficult. So get ready.
Yeah. No more points, but I do want to be clear on this. It's going to be difficult on both sides, right? It was probably even harder for my wife than it was for me. And I'm not saying that just because she's in the other room, but it really was. It was that difficult for her to have to uh, learn my culture, learn my background. I came from a place in New York where I didn't trust anybody, right? And that was hard. Had she known that beforehand, she probably handled things differently with me. And so it was difficult for her to also have to know me, and it continues to be hard, I think.
Yeah. We got somebody in the comment. They're talking about maximizing those Netflix and chill moments. Sit down and learn about each other. I hope that was for the married folks, those newly married folks, because sometimes, single, you got to be careful with Netflix and chill. You got to be careful with that. So those for the married folks. Sit down and learn about each other. Single folks, go sit down at a restaurant where there's people out there that can watch you. Let's jump on into our next point, our last point of the evening. There is no room to be selfish if you want a successful marriage. And man, we've kind of hinted on it along the way about being selfish, about eliminating pride. We've talked about it kind of through this journey of no judgment and unjust criticism. We've talked about it in apologizing and forgiveness. But let's go a little bit deeper into that selfish part, because this last point I talked about, this is two people coming together. Like when I said I do this today, I was still Mike saying I do this today. And I still fall into the trap sometimes of what I want. Help us out.
Yeah. I think for me, when I sent this point to you, man, I think the biggest thing I was remembering is, I grew up in an environment where I was taught to get everything for me, right? It's all about me. What's going to make me happy? What's going to bring me pleasure? What's going to make me look better, be better, right? It's all about me, and we're taught that. And so when you go into marriage with the me mentality, and you carry that on, man, that's going to play out in every part of your marriage. Right. And so, this is all adults here, right, bro?
Yeah, they're all adults.
Perfect.
We all
one of the things you talked about, keeping it real and raw, man. One of those things is, like, even with pornography and it's one of those things that you look at. Why? Because it's self-pleasing, right? It's all about you get pleasure from what you see, you get pleasure, and all of that, right? It's all about you, and you bring that into your marriage. That affects the intimacy that you have with your wife, right? And so I think when I think about this point was, man, I was always taught that, like, I'm a big, I like hip hop, right? I grew up on hip hop and the rap culture. That's what they teach you, right? My thing was, man, I couldn't wait to get older to be around a bunch of women, pleasing me, right? And so you bring that into your marriage, man. You're definitely gonna hurt your marriage, right? And so you can't have that. You can't have selfishness in your marriage. It'll ruin every single part of your marriage.
Yeah, man. When I think about this whole selfishness, or this I that you replace with we, man, there's so many things that I've had to give up that needed to be given up. You specifically talked about pleasure, and see, a lot of times we don't think about what it's doing to our souls, and we definitely don't think about what it's doing to our spouse, to the other part of the equation. You talked about pornography. I even think about I think about my preferences and always wanting. We talked about AC, or always wanting. I want the room to look a certain way. I gotta have a certain seat, or I gotta the meal has to be made at a certain time. There was a lot of things that I had to give up for the sake of we. Coming in at a certain time of the night, we grown, but coming in, I got a family. I want to sit down and eat dinner with my family, sit down and have dinner with my wife. I had to give up the autonomy of I could just go where I want, when I want. And me checking in, I'm not losing anything. I'm not losing anything for my wife to know where I'm at. That's great accountability. If anything were to ever happen to me, she knows what I'm doing and what where I'm at. I talked earlier about my tone, being grown. I want to talk the way I want to talk. But coming into a marriage and having somebody say, hey, we're not going to talk like that. We're going to speak like this. So there was a lot of replacing the I's and the I wants what's best for we. And absolutely, I've seen the fruit in my marriage where when I've replaced I with we, she does trust me more. When I replace I with we, it brings happiness into our home. When I replace I with we, it fuels everything about what we're chasing after. Is because when I can model it, and then when she models it, it makes the other one want more, want to do more. That's huge, man.
So does that mean Sade gets to put the AC to 75 today?
Oh Lord!
You just said it, bro.
The great part of communication in marriage and not being selfish is it brings us to the table. And we can begin to strategize about things like that. Whereas if it came down to it and I had to put it on 75, I would. And I know for her, if it had to stay on 60, she would. But we began to figure out, hey, my wife loves blankets, y'all. So I make sure she has the best blanket. Absolutely. That's the beauty of marriage and coming together is I'm not so entrenched on my side and she's not so entrenched on her side. And we're able to come together because neither one of us are being selfish and we can come into agreement.
And then you have kids and there's really no room for selfishness.
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, we that's a whole other conversation. We're saved for another time because we don't have time to dive into that. But the more you mature in marriage, the more you mature as a family. Yes, it's a lot of giving up, but it's worth it. Giving up yourself is worth it because of the love that you get back. It's worth it because of the goals that we're accomplishing together, and we're learning how to come together so you don't lose. You actually win when you give up.
Yeah.
So we have 5 minutes left. Thermostat on 77, Jacob has a fan. We have 5 minutes left. Please, do we have any questions, comments for Hector? Anything. He is here. Tips, asking about his marriage, some of the points. But now is the time. If you have anything, please drop it in the comments. As you're thinking about your questions, answers, as you're thinking about your takeaways, please remember you're giving tonight. If you're led to give, you can find us on Cash App at $FOF Center. You can text any dollar amount to 84321. You could also find us online, our giving tab online at FOFcenter.com. Please drop your questions. Let's see. We got Sade here, Hector. You and Steph have been a tremendous blessing to Mike and I. Thank you for your openness. Sade says, thank you for your openness.
Thank you, Sade. I'm working on Mike. I promise you, sis. We're going to get him right.
I need all the hope and the prayer I can get.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Hector, yes, I'm gonna just echo what Sade said. Thank you for jumping on. Thank you for being vulnerable. I think more than anything, my takeaway tonight when it comes to my marriage, when it comes to being a man, when it comes to having conversations like this, being open and vulnerable. And I believe that we've helped some men out there tonight, both married, unmarried, and just being vulnerable to even start having a conversation about the challenges that exist in marriage. To set a plate or a platform to begin thinking about some of these things before, if you're a single man, before you get married. And then also helping out some women on here too, to be thinking about their husband or their husband to be, in the weight that might exist or the challenges that might be that exist in being a husband. I think perspective is everything too, and that's what I gained from the last conversation that we had on Unveiled with co-pastor and our last guest speaker, was perspective of hearing from a woman about the challenges of being a wife, about the things that they've learned in being a wife. It's helped me here on this side and being a husband. And so I believe we've done the same thing for women. You're getting a bunch of thank yous in the chat. Co-pastor says, thank you, Hector, for blessing us tonight. Michelle says, thank you, sir. Jaleesa says, thanks, Hector.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Always. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna let you go.
Can I give one last thing, Mike?
Let me share this comment, and then you can share that. Your first years of marriage are work. This is why you must get to know you and your fiance. I'm sorry, guys. This is why you must get to know your fiance before marriage. Yes, take the time to get to know your fiance. And then also good tips. Thank you for showing up. But sure, go ahead.
Man, just on a last thing, one of the things that I've had to learn, and I encourage everybody, is you've got to continue. You know, I keep mentioning this whole pride thing, right? You've got to continue to remind yourself of what the Lord has done for you, and remember to put that as the center of your marriage, right? You know, I think, you've heard pastors, preachers, speakers say this before. Keep speaking the gospel to yourself. I think the more that you speak the gospel to yourself, the more that you see how much you don't deserve anything, and that the fact that the Lord has blessed you with a wife, you should. that's a blessing enough, right? But the reality is that God gives us the opportunity to be able to build something together with somebody. And so, man, don't forget that marriage, the fact that you found a wife, the Bible calls it a good thing. It's a blessing. Put the work in it, but don't forget that that the Lord did much greater for you, right? And the more that you see that, the more that you'll see how much forgiveness and apologizing is all important.
Thank you so much for that and leaving us with that word. Have a great night. We're gonna pray for you and Stephanie and your wonderful family. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Hector. We thank you for the wisdom that he was able to share tonight. We thank you for his vulnerability. We thank you that he was willing to come and spread himself across our attention, so that we can glean some principles and think about the things that he's learned across his journey. I pray that the things that he shares be edifying for every listener on tonight. We ask that you continue to give them grace and mercy in their marriage and bringing them together as they continue to learn to be one. Bless them even the more. In your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks, bro.
Amen.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Family, this has been another great discussion of Unveiled, the mystery and the magic. We got a chance to hear from a great brother on tonight. I hope that it blessed you. I hope that there's some things that you could take back with you and begin to discuss with your spouse. And even if you're not married and you're looking to be married, there's some things that you could begin to pray about for a future husband, for your future spouse. You can begin to posture your prayers in a direction. Family, it is always a pleasure to be before you. I love you, and I'll see you next time.